He locked up his own mother to steal her millions, but made a fatal mistake. Imagine waking up in a hammock suspended in the basement of your own house. Your wrists burn under tight ropes. Your throat is dry as a desert. You hear footsteps above you. Familiar footsteps, the ones that once brought comfort, but now only bring dread. The door creaks open. Light floods the basement, and then you see his face, your stepson, the boy you raised, the boy you loved like your own son. Mateo stares at you with hollow eyes, counting $100 bills in his hand, and says, "I'll be back, maybe." The door slams shut. Darkness again. Amelia Reynolds, 68 years old, a multimillionaire and respected widow in Boston, Massachusetts, was living this nightmare. But what Mateo didn't know was that someone was watching, someone small, someone innocent, and that someone was about to bring his entire perfect plan crashing down. This is the story of how greed twisted love into torture, how luxury was built on suffering, and how one mistake, one single fatal mistake, brought it all to ruin. But before we get to the mistake that cost Mateo everything, you need to understand who Amelia Reynolds was. Because what happened to her didn't start in the basement. It started decades earlier, in a life that seemed far too perfect to be destroyed. Amelia Catherine Reynolds wasn't born rich. She became rich. The only child of Robert and Catherine Morrison, Amelia grew up in Portland, Maine, in a modest home where money was tight, but love was never lacking. Her father worked as a naval engineer, her mother as an elementary school teacher. They didn't have mansions, but they had dignity. They didn't own imported cars, but they had principles, and those principles shaped Amelia. "Money comes and goes, Amelia," her father used to say as he fixed the roof on Sundays. But character stays. And it's what people remember when you're no longer here. She carried those words with her for life. At 22, fresh out of Boston University, with a degree in business administration, Amelia met James Reynolds at a cafe in Beacon Hill. He was 15 years older, a widower, and the owner of a thriving import-export business in the booming 1980s. James had a son from his first marriage, Mateo, just 7 years old then, a boy with dark eyes and a shy smile. "He needs a mother," James admitted on their third date with a disarming honesty. "And I need you." Amelia fell in love with both of them. With James, the kind, hard-working man he was, and with Mateo, the little boy who deserved tenderness after losing his mother so young. They married 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony at Boston's Old North Church. Amelia didn't just become a wife, she became a mother, and she took that role seriously. She woke up early to make Mateo's breakfast, took him to school, helped with homework, attended every school play. She never called him stepson. To her, he was her son. Period. The following years were years of growth. James's business flourished. International contracts multiplied. The Reynolds family climbed from upper middle class to Boston's elite. They bought a mansion in Back Bay, a 4-story property with gardens that looked like paintings and a sweeping view of the Charles River. Amelia decorated every room with taste, mixing European elegance with the warm American comfort she so deeply valued. "It doesn't matter how many rooms this house has," she would tell James as they dined on the veranda, watching the sunset over the city. "What matters is that it feels like home." And it did. For a long time, it truly did. Mateo grew up surrounded by privilege, private school, tennis lessons, summer trips to Europe, but Amelia and James never let him forget where they came from. Every Christmas, the family served meals at homeless shelters. Every birthday, Amelia took Mateo to donate toys at orphanages. "You have everything, Mateo," she told him, kneeling to meet his eyes. "But never forget, with privilege comes responsibility. Always help those in need, always." He nodded, smiled, seemed to understand. But something, somewhere inside him, never took root. The teenage years brought change. Mateo grew more distant. He went out more, came home later, pushed against the rules. Amelia tried to talk, but he averted his gaze. James tried to enforce limits, but Mateo exploded. "You're not my real dad," he shouted one night at 16, after James refused to give him the car keys. James turned pale. Amelia felt her heart crack. "Mateo, your father loves you," she said gently. "We both love you, more than you can imagine." He didn't answer. He stormed upstairs and slammed his bedroom door. But in time, he came back. He apologized, hugged James, hugged Amelia, said he was just confused, that being a teenager was hard, that he knew how loved he was, and they believed him. because they wanted to believe. Matteo went off to college, Harvard no less, studied business, graduated with honors. James and Amelia were in the audience, standing and applauding with tears of pride in their eyes. Amelia held a sign that read, "Our pride, our son." After graduation, Matteo moved back home, said he wanted to work with his father, learn the business, one day take over the company. James was thrilled. Amelia felt relieved. Maybe, they thought, the rough years were behind them. Maybe Matteo had finally grown up. For 3 years, everything seemed perfect. Matteo worked hard. James prepared him for succession. Amelia remained the heart of the home, organizing dinners, welcoming friends, keeping the soul of the house alive. But then, things began to change. James started coughing, lightly at first, then more often, then with blood. "It's just a bad flu," he insisted, wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. But Amelia knew. Mothers and wives always know. She dragged him to the doctor. Tests. More tests. Then the silent office, the oncologist's grave expression, the words that shatter worlds. Lung cancer. Advanced stage. James was 68 years old and had 6 months to live. The news shook the family like an earthquake. Amelia cried for 3 days straight. Then she wiped her tears and decided, if the time was short, it would be meaningful. She turned the house into a sanctuary of comfort, hired the best nurses, cooked James's favorite meals, read to him at night, held his hand while he slept. Matteo, on the other hand, seemed absent. He visited his father, yes, but always in a rush, always with his phone in hand, always avoiding eye contact when James tried to talk about the future. "He's grieving, Amelia," James whispered weakly from the bed. "It's hard for a son to watch his father die. Be patient with him." And she was. But she should have paid more attention, because while James was fading away, Matteo was busy. Not with mourning, not with pain, with calculations. The death of James Reynolds came on an October morning, when Boston's leaves burned like fire, and the air smelled of melancholy. Amelia was beside him, as she had been every night for the past months. Her hand held his. Her voice whispered prayers and memories, stories of their first meeting, their honeymoon in Paris, the laughter shared around the dinner table. "You were the love of my life, James," she said, her voice breaking. "And you always will be. Always." James opened his eyes, those blue eyes that once shone with life, and smiled. Weak, but genuine. "Take care of him," he whispered, his breath failing. "Take care of Matteo. He needs you." "I will," Amelia promised, tears running down her cheeks. "I promise." James closed his eyes and never opened them again. The funeral was dignified, just as James deserved. A full church. Friends, colleagues, company employees all came to pay their respects. Matteo delivered a moving speech, his voice trembling, his eyes red. He spoke of his father with reverence, with love, with grief. Amelia hugged him afterward. "He's proud of you," she whispered. "Wherever he is, he's proud." Matteo hugged her back. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." She believed his sincerity, because she wanted to believe. But sincerity and intention are not the same thing. The first days after the funeral were a blur of condolences, paperwork, and heavy silence. The mansion felt hollow without James. His footsteps, his laughter, his presence, everything was missing. Amelia wandered through the rooms like a ghost, touching the objects he had touched, sitting in the chairs he had sat in, searching for any trace of warmth that no longer existed. Matteo, on the other hand, was active. "Mom, we need to talk about finances," he said one morning, sitting at the kitchen table with a folder full of documents. Amelia blinked, confused. "Now? It's important. Dad left things organized, but there are decisions that need to be made." She sighed. "Matteo, I barely slept. Can we do this another day?" "Of course," he said, closing the folder with a reassuring smile. "No rush. I just want to help." But he came back the next day, and the next, and the next, always with documents, always with suggestions, always with that tone of the dutiful son. "Sign here, Mom. It's just to transfer the account into my name too, to make payments easier. Sign here. It gives me access to the investments in case you need something urgent. Sign here, standard procedure, everyone does it." And Amelia signed, because she trusted him, because he was her son, because James had asked her to take care of him, and taking care meant trusting, right? Wrong. Weeks passed. Amelia started noticing changes, small ones at first. Her credit card was declined at the grocery store. The housekeeper, who had worked in the mansion for 10 years, was dismissed without warning. The driver, too. "Matteo, what's going on?" she asked, bewildered. "We're cutting unnecessary expenses, Mom. Dad left a lot of money, but we have to be smart. You don't need a housekeeper. I can help with the shopping, and a driver? Uber's cheaper." She hesitated but agreed. Maybe he was right. Maybe she really didn't need so much luxury. But then, the visits began to vanish. Margaret, her best friend of 30 years, tried to stop by, but Matteo told her Amelia was resting. "She doesn't want to see anyone right now, Margaret. She's grieving. She needs space. But I spoke to her yesterday and she said..." "She's confused, Margaret. Age, you know how it is. I'm taking care of her." Margaret left, worried but with no choice. Other friends tried calling. Matteo always answered. "She's sleeping. She's at the doctor's." She asked not to be disturbed. Little by little, the outside world disappeared. The phone stopped ringing. The visits ceased. Amelia began to feel the weight of isolation, but whenever she questioned Matteo, he always had an explanation ready. "People have their own lives, Mom. We can't expect them to call all the time." She wanted to believe, but something inside her screamed it wasn't right. And then one night everything changed. Amelia was in the living room reading when she heard the sound of locks being installed on the doors. She stood up, confused, and walked to the hallway. "Matteo, what are you doing?" He turned, holding a drill. "Security, Mum. Boston's dangerous. I'm reinforcing the doors." "But why from the inside?" He smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. "Just a precaution." She didn't argue, but a chill ran down her spine. That night Amelia tried to open her bedroom door. It was locked, from the outside, and that's when the fear began. Matteo's change wasn't sudden. It was meticulous, calculated, like a predator studying its prey before striking. He started with the small freedoms. Amelia would wake up to find the landline disconnected. "Problem with the line, Mum. I'll call the company." But he never did. Her cell phone vanished from the nightstand. "Oh, you must have misplaced it. I'll look for it." But he never found it. The car keys disappeared. "You shouldn't be driving anymore, Mom. Your eyesight isn't the same. It's dangerous." Amelia protested, but weakly. The truth was, age really was catching up with her. She was 68, with aches, with moments of forgetfulness. Maybe Matteo was right. Maybe she really did need help. That's how abuse begins. With doubts, with gaslighting, with the victim questioning her own sanity. The doors started staying locked more often. First the bedroom, then the living room, then the kitchen. "Only when I'm out, Mom." So no one breaks in. Security. But security for whom? Amelia began to feel like a prisoner in her own home. One morning she tried to leave, but the front door was locked. She knocked, called out for Matteo. Nothing. Hours later he appeared, calm as ever. "Sorry, Mum. Didn't hear you. I was at the office. Did you need something?" "I just wanted to walk, to get some air. It's cold outside. You might catch a flu. Better to stay in." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she saw something that terrified her: indifference. Matteo no longer saw her as a mother. He saw her as an obstacle, and obstacles need to be removed. Days turned into weeks. Meals became irregular. Sometimes Matteo brought a plate. Other times he forgot. "Sorry, Mom. I was busy. There are cookies in the cabinet." Amelia began to lose weight. Her clothes hung loose. Her face grew pale. She tried to complain, but Matteo always had an excuse. "You're not eating right because of grief. It's normal." Normal. That word he used to normalize the abnormal. The bank accounts were fully transferred into Matteo's name. Amelia found out when she tried to withdraw money from an ATM. The one rare moment she managed to get out of the house in weeks, and the card was declined. Insufficient funds. Impossible. James had left more than $8 million in liquid assets. Not to mention the mansion, the company, the investments. How could there be no funds? She returned home, furious, and confronted Matteo for the first time with real firmness. "Matteo, where's the money?" He was in the living room drinking expensive whiskey, the kind James saved for special occasions, and didn't even bother to stand when she entered. "It's invested, Mum." "Invested where? I didn't authorize any investments." "You signed the papers." "What papers?" He sighed as if she were a stubborn child. "The ones I showed you last month. Remember?" She didn't remember, or rather, she remembered signing documents, but Matteo had never explained what they were. He just said, "Sign here, Mom," and she trusted him. Trusted him. That was her mistake, and she was beginning to realize it. "I want to see the documents. Now." "They're with the lawyer." "What lawyer? Mr. Harrison always handled our affairs." Harrison's too old. I hired someone new, more efficient. I never authorized that. Mateo finally stood, walked up to her. Too close, invading her space. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but heavy with threat. You authorized everything, Mom. It's all signed, and you know why. Because you're old. You're tired. You're confused. And I, as your son, am taking care of you. So stop making problems and go rest. Amelia felt her legs tremble. Not from fear, from rage. I raised you, I loved you like my own son, and this is how you treat me? Mateo smiled, a cold, empty smile. You did raise me, with my father's money, and now that money is mine, legally mine. So yes, Mom, this is exactly how I treat you. He walked out of the room. Amelia heard her bedroom door lock. From the outside, she pounded on the door, screamed, cried. No one heard, or rather, someone did. But it took time for them to understand what was happening. The transformation from mansion to prison was gradual, but absolute. Mateo started locking Amelia in her bedroom during the day. I have to go out, Mom. Work. You understand. But work meant parties, bars, trips to Miami, New York, Las Vegas, all funded by money that was hers. Amelia spent hours staring out the bedroom window, watching life unfold without her. Kids walking to school, neighbors out with their dogs, the mailman dropping off letters. The world kept turning. Indifferent to the fact that she was trapped less than 20 yards away, she tried shouting out the window once. Help! Somebody help me! But her voice was weak from malnutrition, and the street was loud. No one heard. Or they heard and ignored it. After all, who would imagine that a wealthy woman in a Back Bay mansion was being held prisoner? Food became irregular. Sometimes Mateo would shove a sandwich through the door. Other times, nothing. Forgot, Mom, sorry. But he never seemed genuinely sorry, just bored. Amelia began losing weight rapidly. Her clothes hung off her body. Her hair, once well kept, was tangled, colorless. She looked like a shadow of herself. And then, on a December night, Mateo crossed the final line. He opened the bedroom door, not with food, but with ropes. What? What are you going to do? Amelia asked, backing away. You made too much noise today. The neighbors might have heard. Mateo, for God's sake, shut up. He grabbed her. She tried to resist, but she was weak. He dragged her downstairs to the basement, a space James had used as a wine cellar, filled with expensive bottles and memories of happy dinners. Mateo strung a hammock between two wooden beams. He tied Amelia's wrists with rough ropes that cut into her skin, tied her ankles. She hung there, swaying slightly, defenseless. Mateo, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. You don't have to do this. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Just let me go. He stood there watching. No emotion, no remorse. You're a problem, Mum. And problems need to be managed. I'm your mother. No, you were the woman who married my father. And now he's dead. And the money is mine. He went up the stairs. The basement door closed. Darkness. Amelia screamed until her throat burned, cried until there were no tears left, prayed until the words stopped making sense. And there, hanging in that hammock like a trapped animal, she realized the devastating truth. Mateo never loved her. Maybe he never knew how to love. He saw James as a means, saw her as a tool, and now that he had what he wanted, she was disposable. But Amelia Reynolds was not weak, not completely. She started observing. Mateo came down once a day, sometimes not even that. He brought water when he remembered. Food, rarely. He talked on his phone while she hung there, chatting about new cars, planned trips, parties at rented mansions. Yeah, man, I bought the Ferrari. Red, like you said. It gets here next week, he'd say, laughing, while Amelia begged for water a few feet away. He wouldn't look at her. It was as if she didn't exist. Days blurred together. Amelia lost track of time. Her mind began to falter. Sometimes she saw James, seated in an imaginary chair in the corner of the basement, nodding. Hold on, Amelia, someone will find you. But who? Everyone thought she was fine. Everyone thought Mateo was taking care of her. And he was convincing, charming, polite with the neighbors. My mother's frail. She prefers privacy. But she's fine. Thanks for asking. Amelia began to accept that she might die there. Alone, forgotten, betrayed by the only son she ever had. But then, something changed. A sound, small, above her, light footsteps, a child, and a voice, thin, curious, concerned. Is someone down there? While Amelia withered in the basement, Mateo lived like a king. He turned the Back Bay mansion into his personal playground. The living room Amelia had decorated with such care was now cluttered with empty crystal bottles, overflowing ashtrays, and takeout containers from restaurants that charged $300 a plate. The master bedroom, where James and Amelia had slept side by side for decades, was now Mateo's territory. He slept late, woke up hungover, ordered delivery and crawled back into bed. Sometimes he brought women, models, wannabe actresses, anyone impressed by money. "This house has been in my family for generations," he'd lie, pouring $1,000 wine. "Everything's paid off, no debt, life's good, you know." They laughed, they drank, they spent the night, and left without knowing that just a few feet below, a woman was tied up, starving, begging for help. Mateo spent as if there were no tomorrow, and in a way there wasn't. Not if he kept that pace. He bought a red Ferrari 488 GTB and parked it right in front of the house like a trophy. 70 grand in wheels and ego. The neighbors talked. "Amelia's son is doing well, huh? Looks like he inherited his father's business sense. She's lucky to have a son who takes such good care of her." Mateo smiled, waved, and revved the engine. The roar echoed down the quiet street. Power, control, dominance. He traveled constantly. Miami for yacht parties, Las Vegas for private poker tables, New York for dinners at restaurants with months-long wait lists, always first class, always five-star hotels, always surrounded by people who called him friend, but who would vanish the second the money ran out. To Mateo, they shouted in noisy clubs, raising $500 tequila shots. "Cheers," he replied, laughing, drunk on power and alcohol. No one asked where the money came from. No one questioned him. He looked legitimate, well-dressed, well-spoken, son of a wealthy family, why doubt? And Amelia, she was just a detail, a weight in the basement, a locked-up secret, but secrets have a way of leaking. Mateo made mistakes, small ones at first. He spoke loudly on the phone, forgetting the mansion's walls weren't that thick. "No, man, my mom's not going to show up. She's indisposed. Health issue. Could last a while." He left lights on at odd hours, forgot to close curtains. Once, a neighbor saw Mateo take a plate of food down to the basement and come back up with it empty. "Why is he eating in the basement?" the neighbor asked her husband. "That's weird." But weird isn't the same as criminal. Not yet. Mateo also got sloppy with finances. He spent without control, without a plan. 8 million sounds like a lot, but it melts fast when you drop 50 grand in a single night at a casino, buy luxury cars, rent mansions in Malibu, and hand out money to friends who always need a loan. In 6 months, he burned through 2 million. The family's accountant, Mr. Henderson, tried to reach him. "Mateo, we need to talk about the spending. Things are getting out of hand. Where is Amelia? I need her to sign some..." "She signed power of attorney. I handle everything." "Even so, we need..." "It's under control, Henderson, relax." But it wasn't, and Henderson knew it. He sent emails, called, asked for a meeting. Mateo ignored him. Then Henderson made the mistake of showing up at the house. He rang the bell on a rainy January afternoon. Mateo answered, sleepy and annoyed. "Henderson? What a surprise. Mateo, we need to talk, now. I'm seeing very troubling activity. Large withdrawals, transfers to accounts I don't recognize, high-risk investments without proper consultation. Where is your mother? I need to speak with her." Mateo blocked the doorway with his body. "She's sleeping, not feeling well. Then I'll come back another day, when she's better." "She won't be better any time soon." Henderson frowned. "What do you mean by that?" "Health problems. Age. You know how it is." "Mateo, I've known Amelia for 20 years. She's always been healthy. What happened?" "What happened is you're being inconvenient. I have power of attorney. I have legal control of the accounts. And you work for me now. So, if that's all, I've got things to do." He shut the door in Henderson's face. The accountant stood in the rain, staring at the mansion, feeling that something was deeply wrong. He pulled out his phone and made a note. "Look into Amelia Reynolds' situation. Contact authorities if necessary." But Henderson was old, tired, and had other clients. He filed the note in a folder and promised himself he'd get back to it the following week. He never did. 2 days later, Mateo fired him by email and hired a new accountant. Younger, less inquisitive, more interested in commissions than ethics. Problem solved. Or so Mateo thought, because while he was busy burning fortunes and silencing inconvenient voices, he missed the real problem. Across the street, in a modest red brick house, lived the Chen family. David Chen, software engineer. Lisa Chen, piano teacher. and Henry Chen, 8 years old, with curious eyes and a heart too big to ignore what he was seeing. Henry had always liked Mrs. Reynolds. She'd give him cookies when he walked past on his way home from school. She asked about his grades, his friends, his dreams. She was kind, the kind of kindness kids notice and adults sometimes forget to value. But it had been months since Henry had seen Mrs. Reynolds. "Mom, why doesn't Mrs. Reynolds come out anymore?" he asked one day, peering out the window at the mansion. Lisa was grading papers. "I don't know, honey. Maybe she's traveling. Her car's in the garage. Then maybe she's resting. She's older." But Henry wasn't convinced. He started paying attention, watching. Kids are better at that than adults. They notice patterns, changes, inconsistencies. He noticed Mateo went out a lot, always well-dressed, always in a hurry, always alone. He noticed the curtains were always closed, even on beautiful days. He noticed the trash had too many bottles, too many expensive takeout boxes, but never anything that suggested two people were living there. And then, on a Saturday afternoon, while playing detective in the backyard, because that's what 8-year-olds do, Henry heard something that changed everything, a muffled sound, from the Reynolds house, something between a moan and a sob. He froze, tilted his head, heard it again. "Help!" The voice was weak, feminine, desperate. Henry dropped his toy and ran inside. "Mom, Dad! Someone's calling for help at Mrs. Reynolds' house!" David and Lisa Chen didn't immediately believe their son. "Henry, are you sure?" David asked, setting his laptop aside. "It could have been the TV or someone on the street or—" "No, Dad, I heard it. Come with me." The urgency in the boy's voice made his parents exchange a look. Lisa stood up. "Let's go check." The three stepped into the backyard, where a low fence separated the properties. The Reynolds mansion sat slightly higher, its windows facing the Chen's yard. They fell silent. They waited, and then they heard it, faint, almost imperceptible, but there. "Please, water." Lisa covered her mouth. David turned pale. Is that Mrs. Reynolds?" Lisa whispered. Henry nodded hard. I told you someone was there." David grabbed his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Wait." Lisa caught his arm. "What if it's a misunderstanding? What if she's just, I don't know, sick? Mateo's taking care of her, right?" "Taking care?" David pointed toward the mansion. "Lisa, when was the last time you saw Amelia?" "Months. And that's not someone being taken care of." But Lisa was afraid to meddle, afraid to cause trouble, afraid of what the neighbors would say if she called the police and it turned out to be nothing. That fear, that urge not to get involved, is what lets monsters thrive. "Let's just watch a little longer," she said. "Tomorrow, if we're still worried, we'll call." David hesitated, then agreed. Mistake. Henry, however, did not agree. Because kids have something adults sometimes lose, a moral instinct uncorrupted by social convenience. The next morning, Sunday, while his parents slept, Henry went out to the yard with a plan. He was going to find the truth. He was going to help Mrs. Reynolds. He climbed the low fence, easy enough for an agile 8-year-old, and crossed the Reynolds garden quietly. He came up to the house. Every door and window on the ground floor was locked, but there was a small basement window, cracked open. Henry crouched and looked inside. At first he saw nothing, just darkness. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw a woman, thin, pale, hanging in a hammock, her hands tied, her eyes closed. "Mrs. Reynolds?" Henry whispered. Her eyes opened, slowly, as if it took everything she had. She looked toward the window, saw the small face of the boy, and tears began to fall. "Henry," she rasped, "is that you? Mrs. Reynolds? What happened? Are you hurt?" "Mateo, he locked me up. Please, Henry, call the police, please." Henry's heart pounded. Not from fear, from anger, from injustice. "I'm getting help, I promise." He sprinted back, scrambled over the fence, and burst into the house shouting, "Mom, Dad, she's tied up, she's trapped down there." This time there was no hesitation. David dialed 911 while Lisa hugged Henry, who was shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. 911, what's your emergency? My neighbor is being held against her will. Amelia Reynolds, 68, mansion on Beacon Street, number 1247 Back Bay. She's tied up in the basement. We need someone here now." "Sir, did you see this yourself?" "My son did. She asked for help. Units en route. Please stay where you are." 7 minutes later, 7 minutes that felt like hours, 2 Boston police cruisers arrived, 4 officers, lights on, sirens off. Discretion was still the protocol until they could confirm. David went out to meet them and explained everything quickly. The officers went to the Reynolds front door and knocked. Nothing. They knocked again. Harder. "Boston Police! Open the door!" Finally, the door opened. Matteo appeared in a robe, hair messy, eyes bloodshot from a hangover. "What the hell? Matteo Reynolds?" "Yeah. What do you want?" "We received a report that a woman is being held here against her will. Your mother, Amelia Reynolds. Where is she?" Matteo hesitated, only for a second, but it was enough for the officers to notice. "My mother is traveling." "Traveling?" "Yeah. Europe. Italy, specifically. Sir, her car is in the garage, and we've had reports of cries coming from the basement. We need to come in. You don't have a warrant." "We have probable cause. Step aside, sir." Matteo considered resisting, but there were 4 officers, and he was alone. He stepped back. The officers entered. One asked, "Where's the basement?" Matteo didn't answer. They found it themselves. The basement door was locked. The officers kicked the lock and broke it. They went down the stairs, switched on their flashlights, and saw hell. Amelia Reynolds, 68 years old, weighing less than 100 pounds, hanging in a makeshift hammock, wrists and ankles bound with ropes stained with dried blood. Around her, empty water bottles, a filthy bucket serving as a toilet, and the smell of despair, of abandonment, of stolen humanity. "Jesus Christ," one officer muttered. They rushed to her, cut the ropes. Amelia collapsed into their arms, far too light, far too weak. "Mom, you're safe now. We're getting you out of here," she cried, not from sadness, from relief. "He locked me up, my son locked me up, the money, he wanted the money." "We know. It's okay. An ambulance is on the way." They carried her upstairs. Matteo was in the living room, handcuffed, silent. He looked at Amelia. She looked back. There was no rage in her gaze, no hatred, only disappointment. The kind that cuts deeper than any knife. "Why, Matteo?" she asked, her voice a thread. "Why?" He didn't answer. He just looked away. Paramedics arrived. They loaded Amelia onto a gurney and started IV fluids immediately. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, abrasions on wrists and ankles, possible psychological trauma. "We're taking her to Massachusetts General. She needs intensive care." Matteo was placed in a cruiser. Read his rights. Charges: false imprisonment, elder abuse, embezzlement, possible attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the vehicles pulled away, neighbors began stepping out of their homes. Word spread like wildfire. Amelia Reynolds was locked in her own basement. Her son did it. He blew through millions while she starved. But amid the chaos, Henry Chen stood in the yard, holding his mother's hand, watching the ambulance leave. "Is she going to be okay, Mom?" Lisa squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. "Because of you." "Yes. You saved her, Henry. You saved her life." Henry didn't feel like a hero. He just felt he'd done the right thing. And doing the right thing should never be exceptional. It should be normal. Matteo's fatal mistake wasn't greed. Greed is common. It wasn't cruelty either. Cruelty happens every day. Matteo's fatal mistake was arrogance. He believed he was too smart to get caught, that he'd covered every base, that Amelia was invisible enough to be forgotten. But he forgot something fundamental. Humanity leaves traces, and someone is always paying attention. In this case, it was an 8-year-old boy with the heart of a lion, and that was the mistake that cost Matteo Reynolds everything. Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most respected medical institutions in the United States, had never seen a case quite like Amelia Reynolds's. When she arrived in the ER, the doctors were stunned. Dr. Patricia Lim, the attending physician, had to blink twice to believe what she was seeing. "How can someone end up like this in the middle of Boston?" she murmured to the nurse beside her. Amelia was admitted straight to the ICU. IV fluids, parenteral nutrition, antibiotics for the infections on her wrists and ankles. Tests showed severe dehydration, advanced malnutrition, muscles atrophied from lack of movement, and deep psychological trauma. "Will she survive?" one of the officers asked. Dr. Lim sighed. "Physically, probably, mentally, that'll take time. Years, maybe." But they underestimated Amelia Reynolds. 3 days later, she woke up. Weak, but conscious. Clear. Where am I?" "In the hospital, Mrs. Reynolds. You're safe. Matteo, in custody. He won't hurt you again." Tears slid down her face, not from sadness, from deliverance. As Amelia recovered, The story exploded in the media. Airlocks mother in basement to steal millions. 68-year-old woman rescued after months of captivity in luxury mansion. Mateo Reynolds, the son who betrayed his own mother for money. Social media lit up. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone was outraged. Morning shows brought on psychologists, lawyers, elder abuse experts to discuss the case. This proves evil can exist in any family, any social class, one expert said on a morning talk show. Wealth doesn't shield you from cruelty. The case raised thorny legal questions too. How did Mateo transfer so much money without red flags? Why didn't any bank question the activity? Why was no one overseeing the power of attorney? The truth is, the system failed. Because systems are made of people, and people sometimes refuse to see what's inconvenient. The accountant, Mr. Henderson, felt guilty for not pushing harder. He cried in an interview, "I knew something was wrong. I should have done more." But guilt doesn't change the past. The investigation revealed the scope of the theft. Of the 8 million James left, Mateo had spent or transferred more than 3 million in just 8 months. Cars, trips, parties, gambling, loans to friends who never intended to repay. Prosecutors found emails, bank transfers, photos of Mateo living large while Amelia suffered. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial was swift. Mateo tried to claim Amelia was ill, that he was caring for her, that it was all a misunderstanding. But the jury saw the photos. They watched security footage of Mateo partying in Miami while Amelia was tied up. They saw the medical records showing malnutrition and abuse. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentence: 25 years in prison. No possibility of parole before 15. When the sentence was read, Amelia sat in the courtroom. She listened but didn't react. She simply closed her eyes and took a long breath. Justice was done. But justice doesn't erase pain. After the verdict, a reporter asked Amelia, "Can you forgive him?" She thought for a long moment. Forgiveness means letting go of anger. And I don't have anger anymore. I only have sadness. Sadness for the boy I raised who became a man I don't recognize. So yes, I forgive him. Not for him, for me. Because holding on to hate would imprison me again, and I've been a prisoner long enough. That answer went viral. Millions watched the clip. Many cried. Because even broken, Amelia Reynolds was stronger than those who tried to destroy her. Then came the question that changed everything. What will you do now? Amelia smiled. Weak, but genuine. I'm going to rebuild, and I'm going to make sure something good comes out of all this. Rebuilding wasn't easy. Amelia spent 3 months in the hospital. Physical therapy to restore atrophied muscles. Psychological therapy to process the trauma. Nutritionists to help her regain weight. Slowly, painfully, she came back to life. But the Back Bay mansion, she couldn't go back. Every room held memories, some good, many now tainted by horror. She put the property up for sale. A young family bought it for $2.5 million, promising to fill the house with laughter again. Make it a happy home, Amelia asked on signing day. It deserves that. She moved into a smaller but comfortable apartment in Cambridge. A view of the river. Sunlight. Silence when she needed it. Company when she wanted it. The bank accounts were recovered with the help of specialized attorneys. Of the money Mateo had burned through, about $1 million was recouped by selling assets, the Ferrari, jewelry he'd bought, even a $50,000 Rolex. The rest was gone, but Amelia still had enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life. But money was no longer her priority. I almost died alone in a basement surrounded by wealth, she said in an interview months later. That taught me that money without purpose is just paper. I need purpose now, and she found it. Amelia created the James Reynolds Foundation in honor of her husband. Its mission: protect vulnerable seniors from financial and emotional abuse, provide legal and psychological support, and educate families about warning signs. She donated $1 million to launch the foundation, hired attorneys, social workers, psychologists, set up a hotline for reports, partnered with hospitals and police departments. If my story can save one person, it was worth it, she said at the foundation's launch, before an audience of journalists, advocates, and survivors of abuse. The foundation grew quickly. In 1 year, it helped more than 200 seniors escape abusive situations. In 2 years, it influenced state legislation to stiffen penalties against elder abusers. Amelia became an activist. She traveled, gave talks, told her story without shame. Shame belongs to the abuser, not the victim, she always said. And Mateo, he served his sentence at Walpole State Prison. In the first years, he showed no remorse. He blamed his mother, the system, anyone but himself. But prison has a way of breaking people, or rebuilding them. After 5 years, Mateo wrote a letter to Amelia. She nearly didn't open it. She considered burning it unread. But curiosity, or maybe hope, won out. The letter read, "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did is unforgivable. I spent 5 years trying to justify my actions, but there's no justification. I was greedy. I was cruel. I was selfish. You raised me with love, and I repaid you with hate. You gave me everything, and I stole more. I'm not writing to apologize because words don't change actions. I'm writing to say, you were right about everything, about character, about kindness, about what truly matters. I'll spend the next 10 years, or more, here. And I'll use that time to try to become someone you could have been proud of. Not for you, I know I lost you, but for me. So that maybe one day I can look in the mirror and not see a monster. I hope you're happy. I hope you find peace. You deserve it. Mateo." Amelia read the letter 3 times. She cried, not from anger, from sorrow, for everything that could have been and never was. She didn't reply, but she kept the letter. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means release. And Amelia was already free. 2 years after the rescue, Amelia Reynolds was in her Cambridge apartment making tea when the doorbell rang. She opened the door and saw a familiar face, older now, but with the same curious, kind eyes. Henry Chen, now 10, stood beside his parents, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Hi, Mrs. Reynolds. We brought you flowers." Amelia smiled and knelt. Easier now, after months of physical therapy. "Henry, you didn't have to. I wanted to. Are you better?" "I am, thanks to you." Henry blushed. "I only did what was right, and that's exactly why you're special." David and Lisa came in too, and the 4 of them talked for hours. Amelia told them about the foundation, about the people being helped, about how she turned pain into purpose. "And none of this would have happened without Henry," she said, looking at the boy. "He saved me, literally." At the end of the visit, Amelia asked to speak to Henry alone. They sat on the balcony looking out over the Charles River. "Henry, have you thought about what you want to be when you grow up?" "Not yet, maybe a doctor or a firefighter, something that helps people." Amelia smiled. "You already help people, and you're going to keep helping them, I know it." She picked up an envelope from the table. "I have something for you." Henry opened it. Inside was a legal document. The words were big, so Amelia explained. "I'm naming you as my heir, Henry. When I'm no longer here, many years from now, I hope, everything that's left will go to you, and it's a lot. Not just money. The foundation. Everything." Henry's jaw dropped. But I'm not your family." "Family isn't about blood, Henry. It's about who's there when you need them. Mateo was my blood, but you were my savior. You're more family than he ever was." David and Lisa were stunned when Amelia told them. They tried to refuse, but Amelia was firm. "This isn't about the money. It's about legacy. I want Henry to know that kindness is worth more than anything, and I want him to use these resources to keep doing good." Years passed. Amelia lived 13 more years after the rescue, until she was 81. She died in her sleep, at peace, surrounded by friends, and by Henry, who never stopped visiting her. At the funeral, Henry, now 23, a Harvard law student, gave the eulogy. "Amelia Reynolds taught me that heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear bathrobes and need a glass of water. She survived the worst one human can do to another, and instead of becoming bitter, she became better. She turned tragedy into hope, and now it's my responsibility to carry on her work." And he did. Henry became an attorney specializing in elder rights. He took over leadership of the James Reynolds Foundation, expanded operations to 10 states, helped pass tougher federal laws against elder abuse. Every time he helped someone, he thought of Amelia, and he thought about how an 8-year-old boy, who just wanted to do the right thing, changed one life, and that life changed hundreds of others. Mateo was released after serving 15 years. He left prison quietly. No interviews, no drama. He moved to a small town in the Midwest, found a simple job in a woodworking shop, and lived out his days in anonymity. He never tried to contact Henry, never tried to reclaim anything, because he had learned, and too late, the lesson Amelia had tried to teach all her life. Legacy isn't what you accumulate, it's what you leave behind. Today, 38 years after that terrible night in Back Bay, the James Reynolds Foundation operates in all 50 U.S. states. It has helped more than 20,000 seniors escape abusive situations. It has trained 10,000 healthcare workers, police officers, and social workers to recognize warning signs. It has influenced national legislation. And it all began because an 8-year-old boy decided to pay attention, decided to care, decided to act. Henry Chen, now 46, married and the father of 2, tells his children Amelia's story every time they ask about the framed photo in his office. It's a photo of an elderly woman smiling, holding the hand of a small boy. "Who is she, Daddy?" his daughter asks. "She," Henry says, eyes wet, "is the reason I do what I do. She taught me that kindness is power, that paying attention saves lives, and that family is the people you choose to stand beside you." His daughter thinks for a moment. "So, was she your grandmother?" Henry smiles. "Yes, in a way she was. And in a way, she always will be, because sometimes blood betrays, but unexpected kindness builds a true family. And that family, built on courage, sacrifice, and real love, is the only kind that survives time." This story is based on real events that happen every day in every city, to victims who often die alone because no one paid attention. If you know a senior, call today. Visit. Ask if they're okay. Because heroes aren't born. They're made of small actions in decisive moments. Be a Henry. Pay attention. Act. You might save a life. Now drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us, what did you think of this story? Thank you, and see you next time.